Hello, everybody. This is Timothy Mark with Alexandria.
Hey, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Good to be back with you guys again.
And we are World Paranormal Research Society. The website's worldparanormalresearchsociety.org. And the YouTube channel is World Paranormal Research Society. We now have a Timothy and Alexandria Tumblr account. First one. And it's pretty much just related to this podcast. But today we're going to talk about interdimensional travelers or interdimensional beings. And they go back all the way to, really, if you watch the History Channel or you watch Discovery or the Sci-Fi Channel or everything, they do things that research ancient Egypt, which I guess with our brain dead mentality today that we have, with Facebook generation, social media generation, and things of that nature, we tend to think that ancient Egypt was the Garden of Eden. That's where everything started. That's where everything revolved, which is not true, because you have Samaria and other places like that predate ancient Egypt. But a lot of interesting things and a lot of knowledge and a lot of things that we can study did come out of ancient Egypt in the way of interdimensional travelers and beings. And what that means is, for people that don't know the difference between an extraterrestrial is believed to come from another planet to visit our planet. An interdimensional being or traveler is said to coexist right alongside us in our, like, we have a reality that we're living in, and there's another dimension that's right alongside our dimension that we can't see, and they're coexisting right alongside us right here on Earth. But they can switch back and forth between dimensions. They figured out a way to travel. So we know that there's a lot of we watched the Ghost Adventures crew, what was it, last night, where they were doing the thing on the ley lines. Well, if you look at interdimensional travel, the hot spots, like with the ley lines and things of that nature, would be like a gateway or a wormhole. Also for interdimensional beings to enter in and out of. Now, it's interesting to note that what NASA says keeps a wormhole open is negative energy. Is what and I'm not just making this stuff up. Actually, if you Google the NASA website, nasa.gov, NASA has admitted there is hidden portholes in Earth's magnetic field, and there's huge articles on it. And
wow, that's pretty interesting stuff. I've never heard of that. Is that something that's just come out recently, or it's been out for a while?
Yeah, that's on nasa.gov. You can see right there.
Wow, okay.
And what it says is hidden portholes
in Earth's magnetic field. Because we know that, if you're not familiar with ley lines, I'll just kind of jump in. Ley lines have to do with longitude and latitude.
And so it's a very, one of the things that they were doing on the Ghost Adventures crew, I forget where they were at, where they were visiting this place that had all these ley lines and stuff. It was a ghost town. And they were standing up a broom, and the broom was standing up by itself, and they could, but there's a lot of power there. And
they said it was some kind of a vortex, right? A force field, or even kind of a vortex.
And they were capturing things in the thermal camera that looked like people walking around out there, but they couldn't determine. When they ran out, they couldn't find nobody. And so who knows if that was not an interdimensional being. Well, what I want to talk about is, when you look at interdimensional beings on cave drawings and things of that nature, they always have helmets on. Now, we did a location called the Austin Pizza Garden off of Highway 290 in Austin. And it's a very active restaurant. It is still open today. Very good food. But we did a location, if you go to our YouTube channel, World Paranormal Research Society, and scroll all the way down, it's one of the earlier videos. It's called Austin Pizza Garden, the Gateway to Hell. And in that video, we caught on film an interdimensional traveler I mean, it's perfect. Like, we were upstairs and we heard something, and the camera guy came over and he filmed downstairs. And when he filmed downstairs, he caught a winged creature going through the bar. So we slowed down the footage, and it's very interesting that when you watch that footage, you see the head of the creature turn around and look up to where we were. And it was a winged creature that was actually wearing a helmet. And it was very obvious, and it has slit for eyes and things of that nature. So, you can check that out again at Austin Pizza Garden on YouTube. Austin Pizza Garden, there is another video that doesn't have anything to do with us on there, and they didn't capture anything really. But with us, we caught Austin Pizza Garden. It's called The Gateway to Hell. Austin Pizza Garden, The Gateway to Hell, on our World Paranormal Research Society channel. And in that, we definitely caught that.
Yeah, but what about going in regards to that video? Was it either room 118 or 120? Did we not catch what we perceived to be another interdimensional traveler? You said that had that kind of persona with the head, the helmet. That I'm almost positive we caught that, and you did make mention of it in either room 118 or room 120.
Must have been room 118. Y'all can go watch it for yourself. It's free on YouTube right now, room 118, on our YouTube channel, World Paranormal Research Society. Subscribe to our channel, by the way. But, so you got anything you want to add?
I have a lot to say. I'm not that knowledgeable on it, but it does pique my interest. And the first thing when I hear interdimensional travelers, I think of Stargates. Or I think of the movie Stargate. The movie has been done, and there was also another movie, Contact.
No, wait a minute. So interesting that you bring up Stargate, because if you go to NASA.gov, what they're going to do, and let me see if I can't pull it up right here. I'm going to go to NASA.gov's website. But what they're planning on doing is they're planning a mission called MMS. Now, what MMS is doing is they're doing a magnetic spirit multi-scale mission, and what that's going to do is that's going to lead from the Earth's magnosphere, and it's going to take 93 million miles away to the sun's, basically the sun's atmosphere. And so it's pretty interesting to know that NASA, and a lot of people don't focus on this, they only focus on the moon or Mars or whatever, but the fact that they're planning a multi-scale mission with an MMS, and that means magnosphere multi-scale mission. It's they're going to do it on a magnetic, kind of like they're going to set it up where the sun's it's a magnetic pathway that leads from the sun to the planet Earth, and that's how they're traveling. Now, they've already admitted that these portholes and magnetic exist around these magnetic fields. So, and they're planning a trip, but somehow or another, this is not getting out in the mass media. So
and talking on that, I'm going to sort of go back again to ancient Egypt, as I'm a historian, and there's reputed to be proof of time travel, and it's called Riddle of Plains helicopter that was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And I'm going to kind of elaborate on that further. There is said to be 3,000-year-old hieroglyphs that were found in Seti I Temple and Abydos, Egypt. And they are said to depict nothing less than a helicopter, a plane, and futuristic aircraft among the usual insects, the symbols, and the snakes. And as we know, ancient Egyptians, anything that they were proud of, or they thought anything that was worth noting in their everyday lives, their culture, it was put into hieroglyphics. So I have seen the image of the 3,000-year-old hieroglyphics, and you know what, right at the very top, it sure in a heck looks like a helicopter to me. And to me, just like we talk about cave drawings with individuals with helmets on, these people would have not noted something unless they had actually seen it. So that's very important to me. And actually,
let me go back before we get too far along here, back over the NASA mission I was talking about, the MMS mission. There's a physicist for the University of Iowa. His name's Jack Scudder, and he explains it with the trip that NASA's getting ready to take. And this is a guy that works with NASA, to help create this trip. Basically, he says there are places where the magnetic field on Earth connects to the magnetic field of the sun, creating an uninterrupted path leading from our own planet to the sun's atmosphere 93 million miles away. Now that's on NASA.gov. That's on their website. So an uninterrupted path. This is the path. If you take two magnets and they attract together, right? And that's what's going on with the sun's this magnetic path that connects to the sun's atmosphere and to our own atmosphere, and they're going to actually travel it. And I'm just surprised that this is not in the mass media.
Mainstream media, you mean?
Yeah, in the mainstream media. I'm surprised. So a lot of the governments and people in the government wants to keep you from having this knowledge, but NASA has to release this knowledge. Why do they have to release it? Because they're trying to raise financial support to get this stuff done.
Funding.
And so they'll put it out, but they won't put it out with like a press conference or nothing. So you actually have to study and research their own work and their own website. But that's kind of like also be like a Stargate, really.
Really, and I'm fascinated with Stargates. And back to ancient Egypt, one popular myth is that, in quotations, you can either call it the advanced race or extraterrestrials. They were thought to bring details of futuristic technology to the Egyptians, and they were visited from very far-flung, highly advanced planets. That is what conspiracy theorists will tell you helped build the pyramids, helped build Stonehenge, and all these ancient Neolithic sites, and they came down from another dimension or another planet to share their knowledge with what they thought primitive communities. And the ancient alien conspiracy theory claims that extraterrestrials were the ones that were behind, again, pyramids, Stonehenge, and all these other famous monuments. I mean, you can take that with a grain of thought, and I mean, there's been various books, Chariot of the Gods, that has been written on ancient aliens coming down to Earth to give what they thought primitive civilization technology. And it's also very interesting to point out and to make reference that ancient Egyptians recorded any events, like I said previously, that they were proud of and wanted to record. So that helicopter and that plane, I'm telling you, when I seen that picture, there is no way that you can deny that. And we're talking about stargates again. The ancient Egyptians believed in stargates. Also, the ancient Incas believed that the larger of the two doorways of stargates were used by the gods to travel between the worlds freely, and the smaller doorway or the smaller stargate was used by the human beings. So even ancient Incas believed in stargates, and the ancient Egyptians, what they thought a stargate was a corridor leading to a new world or a new dimension. So they've recorded that, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, as we know, is a book. Is a manual of resurrection, and in the Egyptian Book of the Dead they have a falcon, a heron, and a phoenix, and those were key icons associated with a specific dimensional porthole or a doorway to the sky. So in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and there's also a spell 13. If you go to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, spell 13, and that spell is specifically used for going in and out of the West. And the West, as we know, is considered the underworld in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And they actually have several different spells in the Egyptian Book of the Dead that make reference to stargates and portholes, to interdimensional corridors, as they say. It's a cosmic corridor, and it's just fascinating how.
But I think it's important to note too that some of the things that we're talking. All right, it's so complex and so many different moving parts here. We need to understand what interdimensional is. Interdimensional is another dimension that is coexisting with us here on Earth. Now there is passageways that lead out to other alien communities and stuff in other universals other universes, that would not be interdimensional. That would just be more alien, extraterrestrial. So yeah.
Yeah, there can be that confusion, but really there's actually there's a Adrian Gilbert in his book Signs in the Sky compares the constellation Orion with the biblical Jacob and the Milky Way and Jacob's Ladder. So that's Jacob's Ladder is going to the sky, and it's depicted as a specific, almost like a stargate or a porthole to the sky. And a lot of us, if you're familiar with Jacob's Ladder, the Milky Way, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead actually has specific passages that make note of the floor of heaven consisting of an iron plate, and there's different portholes that you can enter heaven. So very, very important how different cultures make reference to stargates. And Stargate and the role of Orion and is very paramount in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where it is the northern stargate that achieves the spiritual goal. So there's messages all over the Egyptian Book of the Dead that make reference to different portholes and stargates to interdimensional travel. That's what I think it is, and that's their way of recording something that they were quite aware of. I don't know if you can elaborate on that. But
well, the fact that NASA's admitted that wormholes and portals do exist, and that they are planning this MMS mission. If you Google MMS mission NASA, they come up. But what I'm talking about is what we caught in Austin, Texas, at the Austin Pizza Garden, the interdimensional being. All right, in Val Camonica, Italy, about 10,000 BC, there were people who drew on the walls. They found drawings on the walls of beings wearing helmets and actually traveling. It appears that they're flying. Very interesting, because the creature that I caught in the Austin Pizza Garden was flying and wearing a helmet, and that's pretty good.
And there's also, if you scan the internet, like I said, don't use the internet as your only source of knowledge, but they also give courses. There's an organization that gives courses, and it's Secrets of Stargate Egypt, and they're saying that in the past there was a high-level advanced spiritual technology called Stargate metaphysics. And it really is, the goal of this metaphysics is to transform humans into beings of light, to prepare you to travel through the stargates of the gods as a star being or a light being. So they're actually taking you on these specific courses based on knowledge that they found in ancient Egyptian texts, and you're studying all the temple drawings, the hieroglyphics that make mention of the stargates.
So let's put it this way. They say that humans as we exist today came about between 7,000 and 8,000 years ago. Anything before that is thought to be Neanderthal or some other form of life, or some other variations of who we are today, be it alien or be it whatever. But you have Neanderthal community was very, very big before us, and so if you go to the Sahara Desert in Nigeria, they also, on their cave walls, it dates back to 6,000 BC, which would be the time that humans exist as we know it today. And they also have beings with helmets on those same walls.
And I've heard stories, and I don't know if you can elaborate if you've heard the same story, is that in Jordan and at some places in the Holy Land, they've actually found batteries, or what they feel are...
In Iraq.
You're right.
Iraq, they actually found the batteries.
That were thousands of years old. So yeah. That's technology that you would think at that particular time. Just like near Egypt's Pyramid of Giza, they actually found 24 alien black boxes. And they weigh more than 100 tons. And they were solid Aswan granite. And they were precision engineered to tolerate even the remote. They can't understand how ancient Egyptians would place 24 sinister coffin-shaped black boxes, and they were buried. And the skill that was needed for the stone cutting was just. It was accurate to just a few microns. So how could the ancient Egyptians why would they build 24 strange black boxes and have them at strategic places 12 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Giza? And the Great Pyramid of Giza is said to be, the pyramids are supposed to be aligned with the constellation of Orion. Orion's belt is supposed to be a map, or even like the Nazca Peru lines.
We put a lot on the Egyptian cave drawings, not cave drawings, but their pyramid drawings and their stuff like that, because they're very educated people who recorded great notes and compiled great books and did great things. But and this is going to sound a little odd, but if y'all look to France has the oldest cave drawings that we can date back, period. And there's one called the Chavot Cave, and it's in Ardèche, France. And it dates back to 30,000 years before Christ, which is way before the ancient Egypt or the pharaohs or anything like that we can think of. And it also has cave drawings, not just cave drawings of animals, but of interdimensional travel. And this is 30,000 years ago. Now, like I say, the way that we exist today as humans is not the same that we were 30,000 years ago. So who were we 30,000 years ago? Who was these people 30,000 years ago? Were these Neanderthals? Were these people from other planets? Who were these people that actually had the ability and the know-how to draw on cave walls, and they just seem to be more intelligent than what we thought they were 30,000 years ago.
Yeah, and even you go to places as far as China. In China, they said they've discovered hundreds of strange discs that were discovered in a cave, and it appears to tell the story of how interdimensional travelers had crashed or come to Earth, and that was the discs were found there, and of course they were confiscated by the government and trying to hide in regards to what was found. And there's actually in Japan, there's a legend that states that there was a carving from a single rock weighing over roughly 500 tons and was built to depict a sky ship made of stone that the ancient people witnessed descending from the heavens. And that's a Japanese legend. So, it's not just ancient Egyptians, it's all cultures, ancient cultures throughout the world that are trying to tell us that they have indeed seen these interdimensional travelers stop, visit, maybe give the primitive culture, what they thought at that time, some technology to try and better themselves. And another Hollywood version is Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls, where we have those aliens with the elongated skulls, and the power that was resonated in those particular skulls, and then the spaceship from there. So, interdimensional travelers have been noted throughout history for thousands and thousands of years if we just care to open our eyes and see what's really around us.
Yeah, so a lot of time, especially on our investigations and stuff like that, you have, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts here. So it's paranormal researchers who do ghost, we go to haunted locations and things of that nature. Not only are we capturing spirits, angels, demons, whatever, but we're also capturing creatures or beings from other dimensions that's coexisting within our dimension. And so NASA's right on I think they may have already crossed into another dimension already. I mean, there's been several scientists who say this already occurred, but right now we have information to the fact that they're getting ready to do a major 93 million miles away, whoever signs up for that mission is pretty much toast. They may never come back, but it's going to be interesting to follow that one. So,
and to make note too, there's actually been 10 ancient sites that have been considered or are thought to be stargates, portholes, and wormholes. I know Timothy touched a bit on this, but it's interesting to note that recent declassified FBI files have stated that our Earth has been visited by beings from other dimensions and other planets. And the 10 ancient sites, number 10 is the Gate of the Gods in Haya Marca, Peru, and that's one of the doorway is said to contain two doorways, and it's a T shape. And it goes into the details of that particular doorway, and then it goes into the other locations on what they think is the ancient sites. So it's quite interesting. That was done by the History Channel, and you can Google that and it'll go more into the 9 other sites. But that recent discovery was only in 1996, and it's called the Gate of the Gods, and it's said by the native tribes to act as a gateway to the land of the gods. And really, really interesting to note. It's just really that through time, again, we're trying to make reference that it's not just one specific culture that has this. And also we have in Egypt, it's called the Place of the Gods, number 9. It's Abu Gunra is called the Place of the Gods. That's again in ancient Egypt. Number 8 is the Ancient Stone Arrangement in Lake Michigan. So that's they call it the Stonehenge of the USA. So that's in Michigan. And of course Stonehenge in Wiltshire, England is number 7. So that's number 7. Number 6 is the ancient Sumerian Stargate at the Euphrates River. So now we're touching on the ancient Sumerians. Number 6, they had a stargate at the Euphrates River. Very, very interesting. Number 5 is in Bolivia. It's called the Gate of the Sun. It is said to be another stargate in Bolivia. Number 4 is another stargate in Sri Lanka. So it's Ransuku Yuna. It's a Stargate, Sri Lanka. So all these stargates all over the world. Number 3 again is Abydos, Egypt, where we have the helicopter and the plane hieroglyphic. Very interesting. Number 2 is the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. So we've got a stargate that's now in Turkey. Interesting. This stargate also is in shape of a T. So this is now the second reference to a site with several rings of a huge T-shaped pillars. And very, very interesting. Number 1 is the Sedona Vortex and the Doorway of the Gods. Another site in the U.S. in Arizona. It's a small town in Arizona, and it's the most sacred city. Red rocks of the desert surrounded by the small town with a vortex of transporting people to another realm or dimension. So the Native American tribe in Arizona knew or thought that this small town created the vortex that could transport you to another dimension. And as we know, the Native Americans also believed that these rocks were spiritually charged with sounds were coming from these rocks, almost like an engine type sounds. And that's why in the mountains of Arizona it's called the Doorway of the Gods. And there's another strange stone arc or porthole to another time and space. Very, very interesting. And stories go back dating to the early 1800s in regards to this strange archway or doorway in Arizona. So we've touched on the 10 places that there's 2 of them in the United States alone. There's Turkey, there's 2 in Egypt, there's Sumeria, Sri Lanka. So very, very interesting.
Indonesia. If you go to the Smithsonian's website, they talk about Indonesia and interdimensional travelers in Indonesia. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's pretty narrow-minded of us to think that that there is not other dimensions and there is not other forms of life and other realities out there, especially when NASA has admitted that there is other realities out there.
Okay, well, that to me, when you're talking about that, to me, that's all about government mind control, and we go into Area 51 and all that, where the government knows that these things have happened. They have proof, just like I stated. The FBI just unclassified some files about these stargates existing. So it's all about the government force feeding you or saying that the general population is on a need to know basis. It's all about control. So why would they want to tell people about this advanced technology when they can control it, manipulate it? That's what it's all about in my mind. I mean, I may stand corrected, but the government has a way of just sort of keeping people in the dark.
It's about power. Who can obtain the most knowledge and obtain the most power. I think that's where it goes to when it goes to governments. Where with us, we just want to really know as much as we can about other dimensions, other lives, other cultures, other civilizations outside of our own. So.
And let's face it, for all you sci-fi fans, science fiction. I mean, I like science fiction. I'm not a fanatic, but I do have an interest. But one of the favorite themes of science fiction is an extraordinary opening in space and time. It's almost like a rip in time travel. I mean, everybody gets excited when there's a novel about time travel. It's a shortcut, a porthole. What is that? There's a famous movie, isn't it? The Hitchhiker's thing to the galaxy. I can't remember the exact name, but again, that's about time travel. Very interesting to note on time travel is that the ancient Egyptians and a few other cultures thought that cats were able to do interdimensional travel. I read that a while back. Not just them, but that's why cats were very sacred to ancient Egyptians, that they were able to go between worlds. There's been several movies in regards to the paranormal field that cats are able to be used, or they can travel through the dimensions of the underworld. So they have the ability to be able to do that as time travels themselves. I mean, I think that's an idea that I would like to explore.
I don't
more.
know. There's a difference between mythology and actual facts. In NASA.gov, they haven't released anything about cats to my knowledge, but they have released that there is portholes, wormholes, and there is something to the magnetic fields that expedites travel even 93 million miles away. I'm not going to sit here and play on myths, but I think the facts being that these things do exist. But let's look at a biblical history, a biblical story that's a biblical fact that was accounted for. Let's look at the birth of Jesus and the wise men. A lot of people say that the wise men was not following that star. They say that what they were following, they were being led by a spacecraft. Now, again, there's something different between a spacecraft and an interdimensional traveler. So there's a lot of moving parts here. It's easy to get things confused, but it shouldn't be, because you had this whole movement of extraterrestrial believers and things of that nature that are now really on the interdimensional alternate reality bandwagon right now. And so I believe that there is extraterrestrials. I believe that there is interdimensional beings, and we caught one on film. So,
well, actually, there was an interesting article that was done by CNN iReport, and it makes reference to an Iraq Stargate that they say was key to 9/11 and to Bush. So this is conspiracy theories using this particular, and this fact about the Stargate being found was true, because it was back in the 1920s. The Iraq Stargate was uncovered in Baghdad, and it says this Stargate was surrounded by the Green Zone during the Iraqi war, and was the whole purpose for war. So, I mean, that's how people are taking a true event of finding an actual Stargate in the 1920s in Baghdad, and then using it for theory on war and all these secret conspiracy theories. It's really...
Let me ask you this question. This is a conspiracy theory. We were attacked by a man who lived in Afghanistan, Bin Laden. I'm a veteran. I served for my country in the United States Navy during the time that we were on the hunt for Bin Laden. Well, what possessed Bush to go into Iraq? Because Saddam Hussein did not attack us. So why did we go back into Iraq? There had to be another reason that we went into Iraq, and it wasn't for weapons of mass destruction. Maybe, just maybe, they were trying to get more information on these
Stargate. Do you think
Stargates.
So this was a CNN. I mean, I'm not saying whatever CNN does is true, but this was
CNN is fake news. But go ahead.
But this has made reference in regards to.
I don't. If that's a CNN quote, I don't want to hear it.
It's not a quote, no. But
I don't want to hear nothing from CNN. I don't want to hear nothing from CNN since I found out that they've been lying to us. So yeah.
Okay, and I just want to make another note is actually in regards to Stargate and portholes, as we know that Howard Hughes is said to be, I mean, we know he was a fanatic, and he was actually looking for portholes in inner Earth and through the North Pole. What was that Admiral Byrd? Was that anything to do with portholes or finding a lost civilization?
It could have been because he did find a lost civilization. Okay, Admiral Byrd, and we need to do a whole nother. Well, we can talk about it right now, I guess. But Admiral Byrd was the most highly decorated admiral in the United States Navy during the whole World War II effort. He was in during, he was in after. Okay, so we know that Hitler's scientists discovered jet propulsion. So when we caught Hitler's scientists, we interrogated them, and they told us that they got this technology from a place up in Antarctica. So the president sent a fleet. It was led by the most highly decorated admiral of all time. Not of all time, but during that time. Admiral Byrd. And he took an entire fleet up to see the civilization in Antarctica. When he got there, and this goes on for those people who know about the hollow earth theory and things of that nature, when he got to this place where this lost civilization was, and whatever he found out, he came back he brought the fleet back. He did not attack this civilization, nothing of that nature. But when he came back, he did a talk show interview, and you can Google that interview on YouTube. Type in Admiral Byrd, and you'll see him give a warning. And when he gave his warning, he said that we should be careful of the civilization that lives in Antarctica. Now, there was a lot of things he didn't tell us about that civilization, but what we do know was less than a year after that interview, he was found dead. And I think he was like in his 60s when he died. So I can Google that real quick. I don't know what his age was.
I find that very fascinating because I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline while Timothy is looking it up. This is the timeline in regards to Howard Hughes. The year was 1938, and that for whatever reason, 1938 is when Hitler was named Time Magazine Man of the Year. I'm going to have to make reference to that. But American pilot Howard Hughes is said to have flew into the Arctic Circle looking for portholes into inner Earth at the North Pole. It said specifically he found them. He flew from Russia over to the pole to Fairbanks, Alaska, and he was actually funded by the same Wall Street bankers who funded the secret space project. So that's a fact that I really didn't know, that Howard Hughes was interested, or he had a secret mission to find inter-Earth portholes in an opening, and apparently being funded by Wall Street bankers who also funded the secret space program. And he actually flew in a Lockheed jet. So that's very, very fascinating. And in regards to a conspiracy, in regards to secret portholes and all these kind of scientific trying to find different technologies, and we even had, as we know, different ways that portholes or all these different timelines in regards to stargates. Just absolutely fascinating.
So Admiral Byrd also during 1926 and 1927, he was also taking flights as well, looking for portholes. If you look, but the main thing that he did was during Operation Deep Freeze, December 1955, which is when it was the largest Antarctica expedition to date, and it was suspected to last 6 to 8 months. It was supported by a large naval force commanded by Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen. There were 13 U.S. Navy support ships. 13 Navy support ships. Man, that's more than we took on deployment with us. And besides the flagship USS Mount Olympus and the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea. 6 helicopters, 6 flying boats, 2 seaplane tenders, and 15 other aircraft. The total number of personnel involved was over 4,000. So this was a big deal to take that much equipment and that many people up to Antarctica. They were definitely looking for what these Nazi scientists had said was this special civilization up there. But yeah, he was 68 years old when he died.
Absolutely, and I mean, I can look at all these references in regards to they're saying that a Stargate was discovered in a NASA Apollo 17 moon photo, and this is a NASA source, July 2013, and it's saying that the pictures that they took actually depict an actual Stargate. So Stargate.
Now, where was this at? Where was this taking place? Because we're just talking about Antarctica. So where did you jump to? Where are we at right now?
I'm talking about Stargates and interdimensional holes or portholes, which is part of it.
Yeah, I know that's part of the story that we're saying, but so just to let everybody out there listening know, we just left the Antarctica region to the Hollow Earth theory. We have to do a whole nother podcast on that one. But for those who are really into this type of stuff, I know that y'all know about the Hollow Earth, but where did you just jump to is what I'm asking.
I was just talking about Stargates, but I'm gonna.
But what country? Where were you?
Well, that was on the moon. NASA took that of the moon that they found a Stargate.
Oh, okay.
So I was just trying to tie into that, but I want to kind of bring your attention to, I think, one of the most famous alleged Stargates that we haven't even touched on, and that's going to be a whole different show, so I just want to touch on it very, very briefly. Many of us have heard of the Bermuda Triangle and strange disappearances, whether it be planes or boats, and it is said or reputed that the Bermuda Triangle is supposed to be a Stargate or a hole.
Before we do that, can I finish the Antarctica story?
Absolutely.
Because I'm confused now. But okay, so because you asked me about Admiral Byrd,
and I was just kind of
and we were on that topic,
and I'm fascinated about it, but I wanted you to find your reference point, so I wanted to keep everybody sort of up while you were finding your reference.
I was already at my reference point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today, and this is a report coming from the newspaper at the time, and it talks about Admiral Byrd's warning. Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today that the United States should adopt measures of protection against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile planes coming from the polar regions. The Admiral explained that he was not trying to scare anyone, but the cruel reality is that in case of a new war, the United States could be attacked by planes flying over one or both poles. This statement was made as part of a recapitulation of his own polar experience. In an exclusive interview with an international news service, talking about the recently completed expedition, Byrd said that the most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect that they have in relation to the security of the United States. Now pay attention to this. The fantastic speed with which the world is shrinking, recalled the Admiral, is one of the most important lessons learned during his recent Antarctica exploration. I have to warn my compatriots that this time has ended when we will be able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. So, again, I said this expedition was supposed to last 8 months. Admiral Byrd spent 1 week in Antarctica and came back.
So jumps from 1 month to 1 week. That's pretty...
No. Again, the expedition was supposed to last 8 months.
Okay.
He spent 1 week there.
Wow. So what does that tell you?
And then mysteriously, he made that comment on February 3rd, 1956. He gave America a warning that we could be attacked by that civilization in Antarctica. 1 year and 1 month later, Byrd died in his sleep. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of people that have been talking about Admiral Byrd's expedition, and I think that would be an interesting topic to delve in further in a future podcast where we could really go into Antarctica, because there's been other references to things that have been happening with the hollow earth theory and all that. People find that fascinating, and I think that would warrant a podcast just on its own.
Like you said that you thought that the hollow earth was another gateway to another dimension, which it could be.
I mean, because hollow earth has been made reference with other civilization as well. And then again, we're going to jump back into the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, the Bermuda Triangle is huge, and it is said to have a huge geomagnetic field, and with solar winds, and it's just the most famous Stargate porthole that is ever known. And it's just with the disappearances and everything that goes on there, it's just amazing that we have all these reference points, or all these areas is being made note. And it's interesting to note also, in 2015, NASA admitted the idea of Earth portholes again, and the area of the planets, areas on the planet that instantly could teleport human beings from one place to another, and are a reality, and they've been studying them for quite some time. So, it's very interesting how all this is just coming into light now in the forefront. And as we know, the Bermuda Triangle is also known as the Devil's Triangle, and it's a large abyss that stretches between San Juan, Puerto Rico, Bermuda Island, Miami, Florida. And it was actually first noted in the late 1950, early 1951. It was just a mysterious area in which huge military ships and planes were lost without any plausible explanation coming from the government or the military. So in my mind, and then we also talk, we could talk about...
Well, let's go into that.
What about the Philadelphia experiment?
Well, now we jump into the subject. I want to kind of address what you just said about Bermuda Triangle before we go all the way back to Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we do know that the ley lines will mess things up, right?
Right.
They'll mess up gauges. They'll mess up readings. They mess up your mind. They make things appear shorter on one side than they are on the other, as presented in the show that we've seen. So the ley lines mess things up. So if there is ley lines in that area, or a strong magnetic field in that area of the Bermuda Triangle, I believe that there is no disappearance of Amelia Earhart. I believe that it is, just as it's reported, that she was killed by the Japanese. That would have looked real bad on the United States at that time, to have let the Japanese kill her. But there is a picture of someone who looks exactly like Amelia Earhart. I believe I have it in that history magazine over there. And she's sitting on a pier, and she's captured by the Japanese. I believe that she was killed by the Japanese. She was a bit of a tomboy. She was probably pretty much, I don't know. She was probably a little weird for the time. And so probably, I'm just saying, for the time, not for today's era or whatever, but for the time. So probably the country was like, let's get rid of her. We're not going to worry about her. So we're just going to say she disappeared. And there's a lot of ships that went missing. There's a lot of things that's happening there. But I believe that things, if there is a magnetic field, you know how it disorients people and things of that nature. But here's something. In the Bible, in the last podcast, I said the Bible says don't draw an image of what's in the heaven, meaning God, what's in the hell, meaning Satan, or what's in the sea. Now, what does that mean? So we do know that there was some monster that was put into the sea. We don't know what it is, and we don't have an image of it, or we're not supposed to draw an image of it. And maybe that's where that biblical story also comes from. So there's a lot of different things that could happen there. Okay, or it could be a porthole where, she went into another dimension, liked it over there, hooked up with a few other chicks over there on the other side in another dimension. And there you go. But now we can...
You know what? I got to just control myself here. I'm not going to delve into his opinion. But, in 1964, Vincent H. Gaddis argued that the Bermuda Triangle was the site of strange occurrences such as the disappearing tanker ships and jets, and then the U.S. government, being unwilling or unable to provide a reason or an explanation. So my question to you out there is a question to ponder. Where in the heck would a large military tanker disappear to unless it was a specific wormhole or a stargate? Because they have sonar, they have all these images that they can take. Unless it's gone into the stargate or a wormhole, where could a huge tanker disappear to? Because they would find the wreckage of it at the bottom of the sea floor. And then we touch a bit on the Philadelphia experiment, and it's also sometimes called Project Rainbow, and it was it's said to grow out of the desire to cloak the U.S. Navy's destroyer USS Eldridge, so that the enemy devices were not able to detect it. And it was basically said to be built on the concepts relative to Stargate portholes, and the project relied on the application based from Tesla and Albert Einstein. So just a little bit of the Philadelphia experiment, how they were using technology and concepts that were relative to Stargate portholes. I'm not going to cover this because I'm not quite familiar with the
Philadelphia experiment was actually happened. And so we do know through declassified materials now that during that experiment, some of the sailors were found when they came back. Now the Philadelphia experiment was an experiment to make the ship invisible. To try to make the ship appear to be invisible. But that's what the sailors were told, okay? But however, it said that the ship went from one location to another one. The sailors say that they went into another dimension. And whatever happened, wherever that ship went, whenever it came back, whenever it became visible again, at least 4 or 5 of the sailors, their bodies were inside the skin of the ship. They died. They took casualties there. So the Philadelphia experiment was real, and that would definitely go into a maybe they were looking for another dimension at that time. Who knows? And
touching again, like I said, interdimensional travel and stargates, and really somebody's made this quotation that stargates is how we're supposed to travel light years from one galaxy to another galaxy. So I find that absolutely fascinating.
And that's what I just read on NASA.gov a while ago, was the fact that they want to go 93 million miles away, not into another galaxy, 93 million miles away into from Earth into the sun in relatively seconds.
So that's why they need to have the technology from a stargate to be able to travel to other galaxies and other planets. So that technology in tune will allow them to do that. And then, stargates, as we've said throughout this podcast, has been made reference through ancient civilizations all around the world. They did have that technology. It's ancient technology, and it's actually found in the Milky Way galaxy. And it's also said, and there's another article that's made reference, a stargate was found in Antarctica on Earth and is estimated to be 50 million years ago.
Now we're back to Antarctica. Imagine that. Wow.
It's everything comes full circle. So it's funny how technology comes full circle. And I'm sure Admiral Byrd, he stumbled onto something that he was not supposed to stumble on. He thought it was his duty to warn the public, warn the people, but I think he was stifled, and I think he was just really snuffed out.
Yeah, he was definitely snuffed out, but less than a year after, 13 months after he gave the warning, he was dead. But let me say this: regardless of what Admiral Byrd found, regardless of what anybody else has found, what we found in the Austin Pizza Garden, the Gateway to Hell. It's called the Austin Pizza Garden, the Gateway to Hell. It's on YouTube. It's by World Paranormal Research Society, us. We found and caught on film, and we're the only company to ever catch this on film, and I put it out there for free, for your free viewing, which I probably should have sold that motherfucker. But we put it out there for free, and so you can go to YouTube right now for free. It's on there, and it is an Interdimensional Traveler.
But when we're talking about interdimensional travelers too, I mean, we're paranormal investigators. We delve in the paranormal world. Couldn't a ghost or a spirit be considered an interdimensional traveler? Really, if you dissect that idea, because they're in a different dimension than us, and some of them are able to be visible.
But we're talking about definitions as in the way of. Which trying to, as paranormal researchers, we have to compartmentalize everything.
Right.
You have ghosts, spirits, you have demons, you have angels, you have extraterrestrials,
right,
which is on other planets and other galaxies,
aliens,
and things
right,
like that. And then you have interdimensional beings. Now, when we call them interdimensional beings, we're not saying like us that have died and passed away.
Okay.
Although technically, I guess you could consider it that, but as we're going to compartmentalize it and define it as in the paranormal community, interdimensional beings is something that is alive and
it's just
and coexisting.
So they haven't passed on; they're just alive
and coexisting.
Okay.
And they coexisting in an alternate reality.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that definition because some people listening may be confused. Well, couldn't this be? And like you said, as paranormal researchers, we have to compartmentalize things so that we put them in the proper perspective because things have to be analyzed. Things have to be researched in a particular manner that is, appropriate for that compartment. Is that a proper way of saying that?
Compartmentalize, yes. That's the way we have to do it. And so when we go on locations, we capture ghosts, we capture demons, which we've battled a lot of demons, but we also have had the luck to capture interdimensional beings. In the investigation that you're referring to this big orb whose face looked like the head of the interdimensional traveler.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we caught that at another location as well too. I mean, we did a watering hole. I'll use the term a watering hole, but I think we caught it at that location too, where the face again looked like it had a helmet on it, or it had wings or something on it.
Yeah, we caught it in another location. Yeah, that's true.
So we've had the great fortune to have at least 3 locations catch the image of an interdimensional traveler.
Now, we are busy a lot, so we have a website, worldparanormalresearchsociety.org. It does not get updated that frequently, so we still have a lot of updating to do on there, but there is a lot of information on there, and you can check it out.
Well, I think, we've given everybody a lot of food for thought. We like everybody to, take away from our podcast a different or a new understanding, maybe a new perspective on the topics that we bring out to you. We're learning as well. So a lot of these topics like interdimensional travelers, I'm not an expert on, but I certainly have a keen interest, and it's really opened my eyes a lot into, again, knowledge is power. The more that you can learn, the more that you can absorb will only better you and your everyday life and anything, the topics that you're interested in. And like I said, the History Channel has done a lot of these topics, different perspectives, but our perspective is really uncut, and this is, we do a lot of research to bring these topics to you.
Yeah, and we got a car for sale. and it doesn't have good tires. It doesn't have leather seats. It doesn't have a good engine. It doesn't have this and it doesn't have that, and it's not this and it's not that. But anyway, so all right.
Okay, where did that? I don't know.
Because like it's all about different things and whatever, but people try to sell you on ideas, and you gotta look for what things are rather than
go into
what
any
things are not.
Yeah, you go into any situation or any conversation with an open mind, and don't take one source as like the true source, because everybody brings their own opinions, their own perspectives into a topic, and we just hope that it'll give you something to think about, something to ponder, and something to further research.
All right, that's it for now. See y'all on the next show.
Okay, bye.